Hello, welcome back to BlenderSushi Live Noding. I'm thinking to make a setup in SVERCHOK that's more seriously kind of mimicking Blender's own Displace Modifier. But I'm thinking to refamiliarize ourselves with this modifier. And by showing you this also this setup using SVERCHOK, basically what I have here is a text object being displayed by Blender modifier, but I'm using SVERCHOK in between. So this is maybe not absolutely new to you, unless that there's one thing that you can do still here is to change this to a different text, and then it's gonna update accordingly. So so what's really happening here is if I show you in the outliner, we have the original text objects, and then it's still editable. It's still a text object, and with text objects, there is one fact: you cannot use displacement here. Text object doesn't work with displacement right away unless you convert it into mesh object. But in this case, what I did was I'm keeping the text objects, and then I'm using remesh modifier to get this kind of nice remeshing, and then I bring it into SVERCHOK. And in SVERCHOK, I'm doing the conversion from text objects into a real mesh. Now, with a real mesh, you can subdivide more, and you can use displacement. This is the displacement that I was talking about. And I'm thinking to do this because the other day I tried to build like a modifier and everything, and then I realized that something is missing. Is the fact that in SVERCHOK we don't have like a preview, like a texture preview, like in the Blender displacement modifier. For example, in this case, the mesh text objects is displayed being using the Musgrave texture. Here I specify in the displacement modifier a texture, and this is a Musgrave, and this texture looks like this, and it's pretty clear. I actually like this very much, like being able to see the textures and then changing the parameters, linearity and offset and all that. This is kind of the setup that we have here in the node vector fractal, but here we can only see it as a number. And I was thinking there must be a way in SVERCHOK to be able to see this as well, and that's gonna be for the next live noding. But for this one, yeah, just gonna observe this Blender displacement. What I like about Displace Modifier is its simplicity. It does what it does, just displacing objects or mesh based on the normal by default, but you can also change it to Z or in the what directions, and then the normal, and then you can also have this RGB to XYZ if you are using the RGB, but the normal is what I'm interested in. And it has this control over the mid-level and then the strength, and then you can also use another object like this empty to control the 3D space position of the texture. So this is really handy, and then the effects you see, it's also interactive. I really like Displace Modifier. Let's go back to this guy, and we can see the similar functions being displayed in the node and then in the texture itself that Blender has. Yeah, so before we create like Displace Modifier inside SVERCHOK, let's take advantage of this, the text and then Displace Modifier and then SVERCHOK. I think I've done this one time in the past, but I wanna explore this a little bit more. I'm gonna restart Blender just in case it crashes. Start fresh is best. Okay, wait a few seconds, and we're gonna start with a text object, and we're gonna use the SVERCHOK hack so that the text object can become a real mesh and it's still live. Okay, file, save as. This is text Musgrave displace. Let's create a text object and then rotate it in X 90 degree, and we can use a different text if we want. Just change the text here and then choose another font. I think Frederica is okay. It's a little bit fatter text and then nice rounded. I'm gonna have a little bit of extrusion, otherwise we cannot use remesh. Extrude it a little bit and add a little bit of bevel, and that should be pretty good. File, save. And with this text we're gonna use remesh. By default this is what you get, but if you choose smooth and uncheck remove disconnected pieces, increase up 3 depth a little bit, you get something slightly better. Maybe that's what you want, but let's keep it low res for now. Remember, the text is still editable. Yeah, so I guess this is okay. Smooth remesh. Remember, we don't have displace modifier here, so we need to use SVERCHOK for that. So SVERCHOK on, and then objects in, get our text objects, and then make sure it's post modifier because we want the effects of the remesh. I'll show you the difference. So that's currently it looks like it doesn't use the transformation, so we need to use matrix apply first. Apply transformation, and now it's correct. This is with the post modifier on, this is with the post modifier off, so you want it on. Okay, now we have this. We can kind of mesh out this text from SVERCHOK using a viewer B mesh. Just plug this guy in there, and then I'm gonna create a material for it. And this is actually a cycle material. We don't want it. We want this alpha 0 objects, and let's create a new material. Give it a red or green, and refresh. We should also output the polygon. Okay, so we have the original text, and we also have the SVERCHOK output, which is green color. Now, of course, with this guy, this is already a real mesh. We can subdivide this more, and then we can use displace modifier just like normal. And by default, this is what you get. It's kind of just pushing more, pushing in the normal for 1 unit. You don't want this. You want to use texture for now. New, let's use a texture. Musgrave is a cool looking texture. This is what you get. Let's use an empty, just in case we want to kind of replace the position of the texture, like that. So it's interactive, it's really nice. You can kind of control the scaling as well of the texture. Currently it's very powerful. Musgrave texture is very interesting looking. It generates a very unusual pattern. Just use it like a little bit, you know, like 0.07 maybe. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Okay, with this guy we can smooth it if you like, but I think SVERCHOK will regenerate and make it unsmoothed, so that's okay. We can leave that for now. We have the original text still. The original text is gray. The one being pushed by the Musgrave is green. Let's look at the Musgrave a little bit. So this is what you get. Multi-fractal. We can change to other dimensions. We can see the effects on the text. intensity. Whatever white is actually being pushed, and whatever black is stay as it is. So that's quite nice. Octave, we can have more or less. This is like the depth of resolutions of the texture. Keep it simple for now. What's really cool is with the displacement, the more you have, the better looking it's gonna be. Let's say subdivide it 3 times. Now we have higher resolution text. You can see here. Maybe that's a bit too much, but it's okay. Still kind of interactive. We can increase this. And perhaps play with the scaling as well. Maybe scale it down. And you can also change this cell noise or whatever. Let's change the size here as well. Maybe smaller, more detail, 0.01. Oh, okay, that's too small. Yeah, that's kind of good value. See, you can see the texture, the mask graph texture, and yeah, that's still working. We can always go back to the original text and then change it. Let's make it SVERCHOK. Okay, let's update it, and you can also let's just use a blend or PS. Scale it, update it, and we can hide the original text. We can always change it all the time, like anytime. So we have this, and what's the texture looks like? It looks like this. Let's change this to 3. Yeah, that's better. I think it's being clamped as well. The displacement modifier is kind of clamping it somehow. Direction normal. You can also use the RGB to XYZ. I never tried the custom normal, but I never tried this. But can be useful as well. Okay, I want to do one more thing. And let's make the subdivision a little bit smaller. So let's say we are happy with this, and then with the texture. And because remember that we have SVERCHOK here, and then what I'm trying to do is kind of look at the original text. Actually, make this no subdivision. I'm gonna look at the original text objects and then the final result after displacement, and kind of comparing the two. What you have is another value that you can use in inside SVERCHOK. I think I've done this. So this one will remesh the text, and we're gonna duplicate this guy. This time we're gonna uncheck the pause, and I'm gonna kind of compare the distance. So this guy and this guy after. Like that. Check the stethoscope. We have this value, and we can use this value to control like instance objects For example, if I generate like a sphere, make it a low-res sphere and view a draw, I'm gonna use the vertices original from this text. Let's see. I think I made a mistake here, comparing the wrong thing. I supposed to get the alpha object, get selection, and then this is pose modifier, and I get the same objects with no modifier. So and then I will actually use this guy, and we get the points, and then we're gonna use the points as matrix. Cut it, plug this guy in, and plug the sphere and polygon phase data. Now for the radius, we're gonna use the distance distance comparison of the objects before and after. So this is quite a heavy process because we have around 6,274 objects. Should have used the cube. Okay, that's cool. It's working. Plug that in. I think in order to make this more interactive, we need to take advantage of particle instancing in Blender. So it's all there's a few back and forth between Blender modifier and SVERCHOK to get the final result. But the setup is really, I think it's really quite cool. Seems to work. I'm just turning off the points preview here, and it seems to recalculate. So I realize this is quite a heavy process. Need to be careful with the number of points, especially with text. In order to get a good number of points, keep it under like 100,000 or under 1 million, because we are looking at the displacement on the screens. That's kind of heavy stuff. Okay, we have it working for us. Let me full screen it. So see the balls, you see the spheres. The spheres are being controlled by the mass graph. So that's basically what's going on here. Seems like a little bit slow, and then there's like a displacement of that guy. Maybe the remesh is too much. I should reduce it. Select the original text, reduce this, and then refresh. Maybe that way we have more interactivity. So if I summarize once again, we have text object, and then we use remesh modifier, and then we use SVERCHOK to remesh the text into a new object, and with that new object we are using displacement modifier. That's why everything is kind of working live like that. Actually, this if I hide the text and the alpha, we have just the sphere. The sphere has all these edges we don't need. Gonna turn it off, turn on shading, and turn on the ambient occlusion. We get a better look at this. Okay, now this guy is supposed to be interactive. It's not at the moment because it's not updating unless you scrub the timeline. Yeah, but that's the effects. In the next live noding, I try to create the same effects, and it's gonna be a lot faster because we don't need to do all this. Basically, I'm just gonna use text object and remesh it, and I'll go to SVERCHOK, and then I'm gonna do the Displace Modifier stuff inside SVERCHOK, so it's a little bit faster. But then again, you have to think like this. You can have like millions of points, like a heavy high-res objects in the scene, and use modifier and still kind of interactive. But in reality, once you're dealing with a lot of numbers, big numbers, you want to use cycles and micro displacement, and then because they are much more efficient. So eventually you want to use proper 3D textures and kind of use that as a shader and do all these complex calculations during render time. That's the most efficient. And then if you have like a large number as well, you want to use instancing instead of using a real object. This guy, like I said, this guy is a real object. If I bake it, all these spheres gonna be basically 1600 something data. It's much more efficient if we use just the vertices. So like I'm gonna do something real quick. So if I cut this, if we use the vertices and just instead of doing it like this, if I use a mesh, bmesh output, plug the matrix there, and then vertices, and merge it. Now we have points, and with that points, if we create like a cube, and then we instance the cube into this guy, and then let's say if I'm actually using instancer, this guy should work. Actually plug in the matrix, that, and then get the box here. You see, this is a lot faster, and we can also still control the scaling using vector in, and the value could come from this guy. 1, 2, 3. Plug into the scale. Now supposedly this guy is kind of get controlled by the scaling, but I think there's a bug in this dupli instancer. Oh, actually I have to turn on scale children. Okay, now it's interactive. I'm gonna save this. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this live noding. So a lot of concept that you need to understand from Blender Displace Modifier, and then SVERCHOK, being able to take the value of the displacement based on the mask graph texture and then pass in the value into the instancer. So there's a lot. This one, even though it's pretty simple setup. Anyway, that's pretty much it. If you have any question, suggestion, feedback, just let me know down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.